Drill instructors slash drill sergeants of Reddit, what's the funniest thing you've seen a recruit do that you couldn't laugh at? Had one recruit paying attention to a bunch of geese rather than us. Made him get up and chase them all away. As they flew in the air, we made him follow them for several hundred feet to make sure they wouldn't come back. I was dying. If laughter on the inside. Was never a DI, but I can pass along a classic boot camp story. I was in the Navy, and in the Navy, your final inspection as a division is before the division officer, which is usually some junior officer puke that got assigned that job, but we didn't know any better. Anyway, before the inspection, one of our RDCs, that's what we called the DI in the Nav, found a locker out of sorts and decided to beat us in our dress blues. That was not fun, let me tell you. Wool uniforms. If we lost our cover, we got beat more. It was bad. Anyway, the DO rolls in for inspection, walks up to the first dude in formation, and he pukes. However, this guy was a freaking genius. He puked down the t-shirt in his dress blues, saving the DO from getting puked on and us from getting beat even more. The division officer was so impressed at this dude's military bearing that he called the inspection right then and there. 5.0 sailors all around. We still got beat that night, but that guy was a hero. An RDC in another division asked a guy if he shaved that morning, and the guy claimed he had. The RDC said, "Recruit, you are either a werewolf or you are lying, so which is it?" The guy responded, "I must be a werewolf, petty officer." Not me, but I had a great team sergeant who had a floater, wonky eye, that he was blind in from an injury in Iraq. So one eye was dead on and worked fine, but he had this one Uncle Ruckus eye that just did its own thing. He was a very physically imposing man with that classic drill sergeant bass-filled voice, and his crazy eye just added to it, and he knew it. He told a story about his time as a drill sergeant when two privates had sat down on fire watch and were kinda just being real lackadaisical about their duties when he found them. So he starts just giving them the business, classic Full Metal Jacket style, and finally he just ending his rant right before he's about to smoke them for who knows how long, when one of the offending privates just says, "Drill sergeant, are you yelling at us or the water fountain?" It stopped him dead in his rage and he just walked away mid-knife hand. Oh shit, it's probably too late for this, but I just thought of one. I was a super light sleeper during basic training. One night I woke up for no reason. The sleeping bay was dark except for the light by the desk where the two soldiers on fire guard were supposed to be awake and alert. Both of them were leaning back in their chairs dead asleep. I started to throw my covers off to go wake them up. If a drill sergeant came through and caught the fire guard sleeping, we'd all pay. But then I heard a slow scraping sound to my right, off in the darkness. I froze and heard it again, closer. A few heartbeats later I almost screamed out loud as I saw the sharp and tense face of our Samoan drill sergeant in the darkness. His face was covered in full camo. He was low crawling underneath the line of bunk beds towards the fire guard. He had a bayonet in between his teeth. We locked eyes, and he silently raised one finger to his mouth, signaling for silence. I nodded and sat back to watch the show as the drill sergeant resumed his low crawl under and passed my bunk in the direction of the sleeping guards. I have a bunch of stories of funny shit I did to correct soldiers when I later became an NCO, but that image, like something straight out of an 80s war movie, will always stick with me. We had two 5 feet 1 inch stocky blonde guys named Johnson in our company one cycle. Different platoons. No relation at all, but they looked really similar. One day during grass week, a couple J-hats made them face each other and go back and forth screaming, "You're not Johnson, I'm Johnson." "No. F you. You're not Johnson, I'm Johnson." You have absolutely no clue how hard it was to not break into a million pieces after about 5 minutes of that. I work at basic training ranges, and we had a drill sergeant yell at his solider while they were getting ready to go down a buddy live fire exercise. The solider froze and started crying. This 18-year-old kid was just in tears for getting yelled at. The DS yelled at him some more, and he finally gave up cause this kid wouldn't stop crying. So he made him scoop tears off his face and put them in his pockets till he filled his pockets up with tears. He did this for like an hour. It was hilarious. In my basic training class I was a squad leader, which is essentially just a person who does extra chores. Anyways, For reasons unknown, myself and the other squad leaders were doing push-ups in the drill sergeant's office. Now when you do these push-ups you eventually reach muscle failure, so you just sorta hang out there in the front leaning rest and try to bust out another push-up every few seconds or so. We're all in there dying, and the drill sergeant says to one of my buddies, "Private Hudson, tell me what's the difference between basic training and being in prison?" Without missing a beat, Private Hudson says, "Drill sergeant, in prison they get to watch TV." The drill sergeant cracked a little bit of a smile and then told us to get up and get out of there. Not a drill sergeant, but when I was in basic I saw 3 drill sergeants surrounding a private who was laying down, and they were all screaming, "Go the F to sleep right now, private. You take a goddamn nap this very second, you poor tired soul." Not exact words, but you get the gist of it. I still wonder how he got himself into that predicament. Not a DI, but I enjoyed watching this happen. On hikes my DIs loved having conversations using the recruits as messengers. The DI at the end of the formation would send a recruit to the front to give the DI up there a message, and back they would either have stupid conversations or talk trash using the recruit. This was something my wrestling coaches did at wrestling camp to make us run more. Eventually they ditched the facade and just made the person in back sprint to the front every time a whistle blew. During FTX, the DS told me to get a trash bag, then go around and collect as many pine cones as I could. For like 3 hours. Had a bunch of trash bags. He then took a little walk around, contemplated for a bit, then said that he was mistaken, and it looks better with pine cones. He ordered me to redistribute all the pine cones. One guy had a leaf on his ruck after an FTX and got the company smoke for stealing private property from federal lands. Everyone was laughing a bit, even the DS. We had this kid who kept pissing himself. One day, after the range, he informs RDI that he had shit himself right after showers. Squad base starts to hold back laughter. DI, "It's not funny." Awkward silence. DI, "Okay, it's a little funny, but we aren't laughing." Man never cracked a smile during the whole thing. In the academy, one of the DIs had a recruit doing push-ups. He told the kid he was going to do push-ups for 5 minutes straight, or something like that. As soon as the kid started, another DI approached the first DI and started arguing that the kid hadn't really F up that bad, and he didn't really deserve to be punished. After some back and forth, he agreed that the kid did indeed deserve to be punished. The first DI then said loudly that he had not checked his watch, so he would have to start the 5 minutes now. At that time another DI approached and started asking for mercy on the recruit, who was by now basically just humping the ground sweetly. It went on like that for a while. Good times. A story from my perspective as a recruit in Navy boot camp. We had an inspection the following day, so our chief was going around inspecting inside everyone's rack to make sure it was squared away. Eventually he made it over to my section. He was checking the rack bunk bed that opens up beside me and had it propped open, so I couldn't see his face and kind of forgot he was there. He's searching through this guy's stuff and sees his small gloves, and he asks, "You know what they say about small gloves?" Now keep in my mind, I don't think any of my RDCs heard me talk until this point, and I said without any hesitation, "I know that's not true. I wear a size 12 boot, but I can tell you right now I don't have a size 12 cock." And my chief slammed the rack shut and looked at me. What the F? He then stormed off into the fishbowl, and all you could hear was him trying to hold back his laughter in the office with the 2 petty officers. In Navy boot camp they call forced PT beatings. Everyone knows what a beating is. Navy doesn't have drill instructors, they call them RDCs, recruit division commanders. One day standing in ranks the RDC is going around asking random trivia questions about a test we had to take to make sure we had been studying. He gets to a guy who was eccentric, to say the least. This is about a month and a half into boot camp. RDC asks the question, guys gets it wrong, so RDC yells, "No wrong, beat yourself." Literally everyone knew this meant start doing push-ups, so the expectation is he will start doing push-ups as the RDC moves to the next guy to ask a question. I was standing across from the guy, and he had a confused look on his face. He looked at his own hand for 5 seconds, then hauled off and slapped himself in the face. It made a loud crack sound. He got himself good. I cracked and chuckled, trying to keep composure at attention. The RDC looked at me, then realized why I laughed had to do with the slapping sound. He turned back to self-slapping Guy and asked him if he slapped himself. Guy says, "You told me to beat myself." Cue the entire barracks cracking up. It was a single moment during boot camp where the curtain was raised and a moment of unadulterated levity came over everyone. The RDC couldn't stop laughing, so the tough guy asshole persona melted away for a good 60 seconds until he regained composure and made us all do push-ups. The push-ups were an easy price to pay for that moment.